You know that moment when your phone's battery is at 1% and you're desperately looking for a charger? Well, big tech companies are having that same panic attack right now, but on a scale that's hard to wrap our heads around. Companies like Google, Microsoft, Meta, and Amazon aren't worried about a single phone battery. They're scrambling to figure out how to keep thousands of massive computers running 24/7. Yes, you heard that right. Now here's the thing. Every time we ask ChatGPT to write a poem, tell Alexa to play our favorite song, or let Netflix recommend our next show, we're tapping into huge data centers that need massive amounts of power. These aren't just big buildings with some computers inside. We're talking about facilities that use as much electricity as entire cities. The problem's gotten so big that these tech giants are starting to sweat. Their AI systems are like electricity-guzzling monsters that never sleep. Training just one of these AI models uses enough power to run thousands of homes for a month. And it's not just about having enough power, it's about having the right kind of power that won't harm our planet. Solar panels and wind turbines were supposed to be the answer, but there's a catch. The sun doesn't always shine, and the wind doesn't always blow. But those AI systems? They need to run nonstop, every second of every day. It's like trying to run a marathon while hopping on one foot. Something's got to give. This is where our story takes an unexpected turn. These tech companies, known for their cutting-edge solutions, are turning to something that might surprise you: nuclear power. But not the kind you're probably thinking of. Not those massive plants with huge cooling towers that look like they're straight out of The Simpsons. Instead, they're betting on something called small modular reactors, or SMRs for short. Think of SMRs as the iPhone of nuclear reactors. Just like Apple took something big and clunky, the computer, and made it smaller and more efficient, engineers have done the same thing with nuclear power plants. These aren't your grandpa's nuclear reactors, they're like the next-gen version that's gotten a complete makeover. Traditional nuclear plants are massive. They take up as much space as 250 football fields and take forever to build, sometimes up to 10 or 15 years. SMRs, on the other hand, are more like building-sized power plants that can be put together like fancy Lego sets. They're built in factories, shipped to where they're needed, and can be up and running in just a couple of years. But being smaller doesn't mean they're less powerful. One SMR can still generate enough electricity to power hundreds of thousands of homes. The real game changer is that companies can start with one and add more as they need them. It's like having a power plant that grows with you, instead of having to build something massive right from the start. Now here's where it gets really interesting. These SMRs use some pretty cool technology to keep things safe and efficient. Some of them use molten salt instead of water for cooling. Yeah, you heard that right, salt. Others use helium gas. This might sound like sci-fi, but it actually makes them safer and more reliable than traditional nuclear plants. Remember how we said big tech companies need power 24/7? Well, SMRs can deliver exactly that. They can run non-stop for up to 2 years without needing to refuel. That's like having a phone battery that lasts for 2 years straight. Pretty impressive, right? This is where the rubber meets the road. Tech companies aren't just window shopping, they're pulling out their wallets in a big way. Google recently made headlines by ordering not 1, not 2, but 6 to 7 SMRs from a company called Kairos Power. That's like ordering a fleet of power plants that could each power a small city. Amazon's gone even bigger. They've partnered with another company called X Energy and are planning to build enough nuclear power to run 4 million homes worth of data centers. When you think about how much Netflix you watch or how many times you order from Amazon, now you know where all that power might come from in the future. Now we know what many of you are thinking. Nuclear power? Isn't that dangerous? It's a fair question. After all, most of us grew up hearing about Chernobyl or Fukushima. But here's where SMRs are completely different. Think of it as the difference between a vintage car with no safety features and a modern Tesla loaded with sensors and automatic safety systems. These new reactors come with something called passive safety systems. In plain English, that means they can shut themselves down safely even if everything goes wrong. No electricity, no human control, nothing. It's like having a car that can safely pull over and park itself if something goes wrong, except these reactors can do it without any power at all. The cooling systems in SMRs are pretty mind-blowing too. Instead of just using water like old nuclear plants, many SMRs use materials like liquid salt or helium gas. These aren't just fancy upgrades. They're actually safer because they work naturally, without needing pumps or electricity. Plus, these materials can absorb way more heat than water, making meltdowns practically impossible. Another cool safety feature? SMRs are built underground. This isn't just to save space, it's like having a built-in shield against everything from natural disasters to security threats. The underground design also helps keep the reactor cool naturally, using the Earth itself as a giant heat sink. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, climate change. Every time we scroll through TikTok or stream a movie, we're using electricity that usually comes from burning fossil fuels. That's a big problem for our planet, and it's one of the main reasons big tech is so interested in SMRs. Here's the thing about nuclear power, it produces zero carbon emissions while actually running. None. Zip. Nada. When you compare that to coal or gas power plants, it's like the difference between a bicycle and a gas-guzzling SUV in terms of environmental impact. But what about nuclear waste? Well, SMRs have some tricks up their sleeves here too. They're designed to use fuel more efficiently than traditional reactors, which means they produce less waste. Some advanced designs can even use recycled nuclear fuel from older plants. It's like having a car that can run on recycled gas. Pretty neat, right? And here's something most people don't realize. The amount of nuclear waste produced is incredibly small compared to other types of power generation. All the nuclear waste ever produced in the US could fit on a single football field. Compare that to the mountains of ash from coal plants or the massive amount of space needed for solar panel and wind turbine disposal, and nuclear starts looking pretty good. The real exciting part of this whole story isn't just about powering data centers, it's about completely changing how we think about energy. SMRs are like the Swiss Army knives of power generation. They can be used for all sorts of things beyond just keeping our Instagram feeds running smoothly. Think about remote towns in Alaska that currently rely on expensive diesel generators, or hospitals that need guaranteed power 24/7. Even water desalination plants in drought-prone areas could use SMRs to turn seawater into drinking water. The possibilities are pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. Even better, these reactors could be the perfect partner for renewable energy. Solar and wind are great, but they can be a bit like that friend who's super unreliable. Sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. SMRs could fill in the gaps when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. It's like having a backup generator, but one that could power an entire city. The numbers tell an interesting story too. By 2035, experts predict we'll see about 496 gigawatts of nuclear energy installed worldwide. That's a 26% increase from where we are now, and a big chunk of that growth is expected to come from these smaller reactors. It's like watching the computer industry shift from massive mainframes to personal computers. The future is definitely going small. So what does all this mean for regular people like us? Well, for starters, it could mean more reliable and cleaner power for all our digital services. No more worrying about blackouts during peak Netflix hours or when everyone's trying to use ChatGPT at the same time. But it goes deeper than that. As these SMRs become more common, they could help bring down electricity prices. More importantly, they could help us fight climate change without having to give up our digital lifestyles. It's like being able to have your cake and eat it too, keeping all our tech conveniences while actually helping the planet. For the tech industry, this is a total game changer. Companies like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft are basically becoming energy companies as well as tech companies. They're not just buying power anymore, they're actively shaping how our future energy system will work. The journey isn't over yet, in fact. It's just beginning. Right now, several SMRs are being built and tested around the world. Some are already working in places like China and Russia, while others are being developed in the US, UK, and Canada. Sure, there are still challenges to overcome. Building these reactors isn't cheap, and getting all the proper approvals takes time. But with big tech throwing their considerable weight, and wallets, behind this technology, things are moving faster than ever before. Think of it this way, just like smartphones revolutionized how we communicate, SMRs could revolutionize how we power our digital world. And just like those early smartphones, the technology will keep getting better, cheaper, and more efficient over time. Lastly, we're looking at a future where the power behind our digital lives could be as clean as it is reliable. No more choosing between protecting the environment and having access to the latest technology, and that's something worth getting excited about. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more in-depth looks at the issues that matter to all of us.